Amid the coronavirus pandemic, a different epidemic has been taking place in the United Kingdom. Child sexual abuse is not something new to the country. However, amidst a COVID-19 crisis, new research by the UK's leading children's charity suggests the number of sexual assaults has witnessed a sharp increase. According to the National Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, or NSPCC, sexual assaults across UK is up 57% by mid-2020 compared to the same period in mid-2019. The charity group says the figure is the highest spike in 5 years. However, this could be a conservative estimate. The agency has also warned that on a daily basis, thousands of children are at risk. Studies have highlighted how data related to the scale of child sexual abuse in the UK is taken from two sources. The first is surveys conducted with the general public. The second is data collected by agencies in the criminal justice systems or by organizations supporting victims of child abuse. It is believed that a significant number of cases go under the radar for a variety of reasons. These include vulnerable children who are unable to speak out because of fear or misguidance. In the aftermath of the high-profile Jimmy Savile scandal, the British public were truly shocked. The magnitude of people that came forward following Savile's death in 2011, saying they had been sexually abused by the disgraced TV and radio entertainer, sparked a nationwide public outcry. Many were stunned at how such a well-known personality with connections across the political class, royal family and entertainment business had been allowed to escape punishment for decades. Savile was exposed after his death in 2011 as a predatory paedophile who assaulted victims in hospitals, children's homes and TV studios, most notably the BBC. Following his death, revelations quickly surfaced about several well-known figures who used their own positions of fame to get away with sexual abuse. Some of the victims say the police failed to investigate their previous accusations of abuse. This forced a police committee to look into potential links between multiple British investigations into past child sexual abuse, said hundreds of suspects had been identified. Graham Wilmer is an abuse victim himself, as well as a counsellor.
The 1,400 suspects that have been talked about today are literally the tip of the iceberg. We're working with hundreds of survivors who have yet to come forward. We're working with them, helping them come forward. So over the next months and years, you will see many thousands more survivors will come forward.
The Jimmy Savile scandal would go on to trigger a number of inquiries, including one that looked into allegations against the Christian clergy.
Our fourth and fifth investigations will deal with failings by two major religious institutions in England and Wales, namely the Roman Catholic Church and the Anglican Church.
How did Savile and others get away with it? There appears to be a historical context to child sexual abuse in the UK. Another widespread probe scrutinized 13 institutions for child protection failings, including local authorities and the British Army. It opened the probe by hearing evidence of a migration program that saw an estimated 130,000 vulnerable children sent to former English-speaking British colonies from the 1930s to the 1979s. Aswini Weeraratne was the legal representative for these victims.
Many British former child migrants were subjected to multiple crimes, including torture, rape and slavery. They also experienced several different forms of abuse, including loss of identity and deception, regarding their origins and family backgrounds.
David Hill is a former child migrant and abuse survivor who bravely participated in the probe.
The second thing I hope this inquiry can do is promote an understanding of the long-term consequences and suffering of those who were sexually abused. Many never recover.
Those under investigation are accused of preying on the vulnerable and the poor, a common pattern among child sex predators. David explains how he and many others were lured into thinking a brighter, exciting future lies ahead.
When we got to Australia, it was a totally different picture. We were put on an overnight steam train, taken over the mountains and then put in the back of a truck and taken out to the Fairbridge Farm School, which was a very Spartan place. We were put into cottages that were like barracks. There was no lounge room furniture, there was no lounge. There were no floor coverings, there were no bedside tables, there were no pillows.
The reality was a stark difference, victims say. They were subjected to a cruel regime while sexually abused and punished for any misdemeanours.
I've calculated for this inquiry that as many as 60% of the kids that went to Fairbridge Farm School were sexually abused. And if asked, I would say that I think it was the same for all the child migrant centres and probably worse in some.
I mean, that's a shocking statistic. And
yes, it is, because everybody wants to believe that if the horror of child sexual abuse occurred, there were a few rotten apples in the staff of the institutions and a few unfortunate victims who at most would be a minority, but I think it was endemic.
The programme was funded by British taxpayers. The government is said to have justified it by claiming it lashes care costs for children and helped meet labour shortages in British colonies. The government has reportedly offered compensation of $36,000 to the victims, many of whom have been scarred for life. Child sexual abuse never really went away in the UK. As COVID-19 confined people to their homes and forced the British public to adjust to a new way of living, reported cases spiked. The NSPCC puts this down to 3 risk factors: an increase in stresses to parents and caregivers, increase in children's and young people's vulnerabilities, and reduction in normal protective services. However, critics maintain the government is not doing enough to crack down on the epidemic, nor providing sufficient support to victims. Charity groups say child sexual abuse has a lasting effect on survivors that hampers their future chances in life. They are urging authorities to invest more time, money, and effort in addressing the issue. Last year, Britain's Home Secretary Sajid Javid led a coalition of ministries including the Home Office, Department of Education and Ministry of Justice to join up efforts to prevent abuse. The ruling Conservative Party claimed that it came up with the so-called Tackling Child Sexual Abuse strategy, but never published and implemented it, and now activists are demanding that it do so. The NSPCC warns that these figures show the crisis of child sexual abuse is not going away anytime soon, at least. Sexual abuse of children in the UK is an epidemic that seems to never go away. Even with countless scandals and government policy that seems to have failed each time, observers believe that things will only get worse as there is no incentives for culprits to quit their ways.